Welcome to Tallgrass Prairie, to this new faces, and to this stone barn. And today's topic is ornithology, and we have one of the best speakers around in the country to talk about ornithology, Chuck Otte, Geary County Extension Agent for 34 years, just celebrated his 34th year. And really he is the Kansas Master Naturalist organizer. Did you know that?
Yeah,
He's the organizer and coordinator for it. We're kind of a loose bunch, but we're getting there. And so he's the guy that takes care of all of our records on that and sees how many hours you guys put in and where you go to do your service as volunteers for under that group. And he's going to talk today about ornithology, the study of birds. Ornithology is a college course that takes 3 to 4 months to cover completely and appropriately. And he's going to do it in the space of 45 minutes.
Wow.
And then
That's pretty good.
I'm talking about birds, I'm not talking about ornithology.
and then we're going to take a break in 45 minutes to an hour. And I've got binoculars up here, and they're nice binoculars. They're not El Chicos, they're nice binoculars. And we're going to go birding with Chuck Otte. That sound like fun?
Any day birding is a good day.
Any day birding is a good day. So without further ado, Chuck Otte.
Thank you, Jill. Jill, I'm talking, it may not be worth it, you know. Open up my bottle of water here because I'm trying to get over a cold. Everybody got one of these, right? Especially the Master Naturalist. Everybody else, there's some left, help yourself. In the packet is the recently assembled chapter on ornithology for your notebooks. Many thanks to Michael Ward from Illinois. He put the original version of this together for the Illinois Master Naturalist. And I looked at a lot of different Master Naturalist curriculum on birds and ornithology, and I said, can I use yours? He said, take it and use as much or as little of it as you want to. So I've Kansasized it. I hope if you find something that still says Illinois, let me know, I'll fix it. Also gave you a copy of Kansas Birds, a species list for Kansas. This is hot off the press. The Kansas Bird Records Committee is a division of the Kansas Ornithological Society, and they decide what's on the official checklist. And as of last weekend, Kansas now has 479 species. We just accepted a purple sandpiper from back in December. So this is the most current thing on the birds of Kansas. And then also we have a copy of all the slides that I'll be showing, because I just hate trying to copy all that stuff down when you should be talking and thinking and all that. Ornithology is the scientific study of birds. And just like Jill said, it is a long, detailed process. You'll learn the structure, the anatomy. I'm not going to get into that. The chapter talks about that, some of the adaptations that they have, and it's an easy read. You can sit down and read that, and at halftime basketball game probably. But there's a lot of good information in there. Ornithology is a scientific study. Birding or bird watching is what a lot of us do. It's our intense and incredible fascination with things that fly and have feathers. Birds hold a fascination for people of all ages. It amazes me at how universal that fascination is. I've birded on 4 continents, and people see you watching birds and they want to ask questions because people are fascinated with birds. They're beautiful. Some are very plain, some are very subtle, some are drop-dead gorgeous. They have many varied songs. How many people like to go out in the evening and listen to the bats? Thank you. At least there's one other than me. And that's fascinating. Birds are easy to hear. They're around us all the time. They can fly. How many of you know who Bob Gress is, or have met Bob Gress? Wildlife photographer. Amazing guy. I was birding with him one time. We're walking along Slate Creek Marsh. This great blue heron just flies over about 20 feet up. And we both just stop and just watch it go. And I said, man, I wish I could do that. Bob looked at me and said, you mean you can't? I'm like, okay, what'd you have for breakfast, Bob? He goes, I said, you can? He said, yeah, but then I always wake up. So We can enjoy them multisensually. We look at them, we can hear them. Get underneath the great blue heron colony about the middle of June. The stench of rotting fish and bird feces will drive you out of there really fast. But we can enjoy them with many, many, many different senses. And they're nearly everywhere. Birds nest on all 7 continents. Penguins nest on Antarctica. Talking about hardy souls. Holy cow. So they are around us. I mean, there's, as Jill and I were talking when I first came in, I am never not bird watching, which always isn't always a good thing when I'm driving down the interstate. Have to throw in a few obligatory pictures, very few if any of them are mine, but I've been allowed permission to use them. Our scissor-tailed flycatcher. Gorgeous bird, we take him for granted in the Flint Hills. Bird watching is a growing economic engine, an amazing economic engine, and I'm trying to find more current data than this. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service did studies back in 96, 2001, 2007 on the impacts of nature observation, people that go out to watch nature, specifically birds. And there's been a bunch of other surveys done by them. Somewhere between 50 and over 80 million people in the United States consider themselves bird watchers. That may be just somebody that has one bird feeder in their backyard and just sits there and drinks coffee in the morning and waits for the cardinals to show up. And there's nothing wrong with that. 2006, Americans spent $45 billion on bird watching, bird feeding, bird books, I see some heads nodding going, yeah, half of that went into my backyard in bird feeding. Absolutely. Survey of visitors to 8 national wildlife refuges in coastal Virginia, North Carolina, the Outer Banks. Found that visitors spent over $165 million in 2006, a very small area. I've been there several times, I want to go back. Kansas is amazing rich diversity of birds. Worldwide, 10,403 species. There's a complete list if anybody wants to see it. Absolutely amazing. North America, around 2,055 species. ABA area, which is North America from the Mexico-U.S. border north. Considered the American Birding Association area. 960 species. Kansas has 479 species as of last weekend. Yes, Jim?
I don't mean to mess with your flow, but when I took ornithology for the first time in 1986, they told us that there were 8,600 species of birds.
Yep.
I just wanted to put that out.
We're discovering more species. The genetic analysis that we're doing makes us realize that species that are similar, that look similar, maybe aren't. So they split it, and they find new species that they thought were gone. There's just a new one discovered in India. So it's just, they're out there. I talk to the people that are in the jungles of Borneo finding new species on a regular basis. Probably isolated to 3 mountaintops in the central part of Borneo, and just crazy stuff like that. It says 476 active species. There are 3 species documented in Kansas: Gunnison sage grouse, Carolina parakeet, passenger pigeon. Gunnison sage grouse have been gone, extirpated for probably 200 years. The other 2 are extinct. Just to clear the air, no, there were never any ivory-billed woodpeckers in Kansas. So we've got an amazing number. If you look at some of the surrounding states, that 479 is absolutely amazing, given that we don't have a coast and we don't have a mountain range. That is an amazing number. People in Missouri and Nebraska, to some extent Oklahoma, are jealous of our bird life. People say, why do we have so, we've got to have a prothonotary warbler in there. Beautiful little yellow warbler comes through, quizzes this summer. One of my wife's favorite birds. Location, location, location. You all know the old joke. It comes into play for bird species richness as well. We've got, we talk about migratory flyways, which are primarily waterfowl based. Waterfowl and to some extent shorebirds. A lot of birds just move in a wave across the country. Waterfowl do tend to follow these paths of migration. A lot of them come right down through here. You can see we're in this nice zone here where we get a lot of stuff. Amazing to me, if I go bird watching from here to Hayes, north and south in the state, a lot of waterfowl. If I go over in northeast Kansas, other than lots of snow geese right now at Squaw Creek, don't see near the diversity of waterfowl. Don't see near the diversity. So we are really, we get spoiled where we are here right on the edge of the Flint Hills. We are literally right in the middle of the country. We're far enough south that we'll get things that breed down here that will make what's called post-breeding dispersal. They raise the kids, they need a break, we're going to take off on a vacation. And they go north. Laughing gull, roseate spoonbills, wood storks are all things that we see periodically in Kansas. We've got stuff from the desert southwest that comes up into here and then just starts wandering down the Cimarron River, winds up in Elkhart, Morton County. Go out to Elkhart on a September weekend and just watch all the birders in the middle of the afternoon cruising the alleys, checking out everybody's hummingbird feeder in the backyard. Locals have gotten used to it. They didn't give them a second thought. We're far enough north that we'll get sometimes huge incursions of things like snowy owls. We'll get crossbills. We'll get pine grosbeaks. We may get evening grosbeaks. So being where we are, we become a funnel. If your fascination is hawks, raptors, come to the Flint Hills in the wintertime. It is Grand Central Station. Redtailed hawks have, right now, most authorities say about 17 subspecies. Some people get really hung up identifying the subspecies, and they come to Kansas and they just get totally confused because we've got them all right here. Got them all. Okay, if you're driving down the road, you see a big hawk sitting on a telephone pole, it is more than likely, 95% probability, it's a red-tailed hawk. Now, which subspecies of red-tailed hawk is anybody's guess, but it is just absolutely fascinating. 3 ornithological theorems of Chuck, which means they have absolutely no scientific basis. Well, some of them do. Birds are inextricably tied to ecosystems and their vegetation. If I want to find a warbling vireo, a small nondescript bird, I simply go somewhere where there's a stand of cottonwoods and they will be there nesting in the summertime. If I want to find Bell's vireos, go and find a big batch of plum thickets. They'll be in there just scolding away at you. Certain species are tied to certain ecosystems. Some have very strict food breeding requirements. And this next one is something that far too few of the general public really grasp. Birds are hardwired. They cannot adapt. They don't have the ability to go, oh, well, this is happening, so I can do this and this and this and survive. My nesting area has been overtaken. And they keep coming back and trying to nest, and they eventually die. They have very little ability to adapt. Now, there are some exceptions in that. There is a continuum of bird intelligence. Up here, scholar bowl. Which group of birds is the smartest? Chad, you can't answer. You can't answer either. What are the smartest birds? Just take a guess.
Crows.
Corvids.
Crows, corvids. Blue jays, crows, ravens, magpies, incredibly intelligent. New Caledonian crows have learned to adapt to make tools to get to food they couldn't get to otherwise. Use a stick to get into a hole to get a grub. They have done that. What's down here on the chair in the corner with the dunce cap on?
Turkeys.
Oh, turkeys are quite intelligent.
House sparrows.
What? Owls.
Oh, wow.
Beautiful, powerful, killing machines. Incredible instincts. Dumb as a box of rocks. They are so focused because of their incredible hearing and their incredible vision that they will be tracking the mouse through the cornfield, through the ditch, up over the road, and they're coming right in on it, and they don't even see the Mack truck that's about to kill them. That's why you see so many owls dead on the side of the road. They are so incredibly focused. They look wise.
Yeah, wise.
They got these huge eyes that give them incredible vision. Black and white only, no color vision. But those huge eyes are fixed in their sockets. They cannot move their eyes like this. If they want to look, they've got incredible peripheral vision. If they want to look over here, they got to turn their head. They cannot move their eyes in their sockets. I love owls. Owls are just phenomenal. Oh, they are dense. Gee, many of us go birding not because of what we will see, but because of what we might see. It's the lure of the unexpected. I love plants. I'm a plant person. I have 2 degrees, both in agronomy. So I'm a plant person by nature. I should say, I normally did that. You got me off topic. Right from the very beginning, Jim. I became a bird watcher when I was 4 years old. Or I should say I've been a bird watcher since I was 4 years old. My mother was a bird watcher. My grandmother was a bird watcher. I was genetically predisposed. I never had a chance. It was bound to happen. And that's been my passion my entire life. It's hard to make a living as a bird watcher, so I had to get another job. If I go out to a certain time of prairie at a certain time of year, I pretty well know what plants I'm going to see. They don't move around too much. They may be expressed better in certain weather conditions than others, but they don't move around. Birds can fly. And I can go where I think there should be Harris's sparrows today, and it may not be any. I can go where I think there should be bald eagles around one of the lakes. They may or may not be there. But what you might see in place it's that excitement that keeps you going. Had a friend said, why do you keep going bird watching? How many times can you see a robin? I said, I don't get tired of seeing robins, and who knows, there may be a very thrush in there with them. Plain and simple. Let's see, who on the back row should I pick on to identify that bird? That's a back view of a northern parallel, little warbler. That nests around here in sycamore trees from about Highway 81 east. We have some big scale ecosystems in Kansas. Forests, I don't know why I started with that, it's probably alphabetical. Mainly the eastern part of Kansas. But interesting changes are happening with timber, riparian timber. It's expanding west in the state. I'm going to show you some proof of that in a second. Grasslands, that's what we're famous for. Thank God for Flint, because we couldn't put a plow on these hills. Guys that tried didn't succeed very well. These grasslands that we're in right here are phenomenal. And a lot of concern about grassland nesting species, even more so than some of the others. Because there's been so much of the grassland lost, and you don't see the programs like some of the wetlands programs to try to get things back in. They're working on it slowly, but it's hard to get people excited about a prairie for some reason. People want flash and dash. Prairies are subtle, and people don't get it. Wetlands and aquatic, and those are different. I'll explain that. And then what I like to call disturbed ecosystems might be cropland, could be towns. It's not native in any way, shape, or form. Eastern deciduous forests, warblers. People think of warblers, tanagers, things like that. And what we have are remnants of that coming down the rivers, down the Kansas River. Up the, what's one that goes that way?
York.
Neosho. Even the and down further south, the Arkansas River. Because we're in Kansas, if you're in Arkansas, that'd be the Arkansas River. Sporadic timber throughout the area. I think there's some great arguments with foresters, because they're of the opinion that prior to about 1500, whenever the Native Americans got horses, there was a lot more timber in Kansas than there was in the 1800s. They feel that the horses would be wintered down by the streams, and what horses will do, just ate all the trees down, strip the bark off. Keep saying, come on, Bob, show me the proof. Warblers, tanagers, vireos, forested areas have increased in the past 100 years, especially the past 50 years, they're continuing to increase. Since about, in the mid-1980s, Max Thompson and Chuck Geary did a 2-volume set called Birds in Kansas. Small, tiny little black and white picture. Good books. A lot of the data is still good in them. But what it did was it gave us a baseline of knowledge about where birds had been seen. We call these county dot maps. These have become my obsession for the past 15 or so years. In 1989, those were the records that we had for barred owl in Kansas. The solid circles means we have a site record. The open circle means we have a confirmed breeding record. Now watch what happens in about 20 years span of time. 1989 to 2010, we've got a lot more breeding records, and look how much further west they're moving. This is because we have more and more mature timber along rivers and streams. Plain and simple. People say, well, we just got more bird watchers out there. Yeah, we do have more bird watchers out there. But you get out into this area, there's a couple, three really good bird watchers out there that bird that area a lot. And they didn't start finding barred owls until more recently. And actually that one, we've now added Lincoln County, we've added some more down here. They're just big old pileated woodpeckers. Red-shouldered hawks. They're all moving west and north of the state because of more timber. Because of more timber. So that's plain and simple. We've also got stuff moving up from this way too that's just mind-blowing. I'm not sure what's going on there. I'll say it's climate change. Tallgrass Prairie, mixed-grass prairie, shortgrass prairie. We got it all here. Species like the scissor-tail flycatcher, greater or lesser prairie chicken, upland sandpiper. Oh, I just can't wait until these things start showing back up. Dick thistle, grasshopper sparrow. In the Flint Hills, we've got Henslow sparrows. You get out in the shortgrass prairie, we've got Caston sparrow. Very inextricably tied to those grassland ecosystems. Totally, completely. Very dependent on the management of those. You burn the grass every single year, you won't have Henslow sparrows. Burn it every couple, 3 years, you'll have them because they need that old living. What's interesting down here, the Caston sparrow, in dry years, those things will move 100 miles east. They'll be showing up, clear to Highway 81, but they should be back around the Hayes area. They move depending on where there's habitat. Wetlands and aquatic are quite different. Wetlands usually have emerged vegetation, can have large mud flats. Think about a lot of Cheyenne bottoms and Guevara. Aquatic is main body of Tuttle Creek Reservoir, of Milford Reservoir. You're going to have puddle ducks, rails, shorebirds, herons, and egrets in the wetland area. In the aquatic area, you're going to have diving ducks, grebes, loons, things like that. Very sensitive to the depth of water. Very sensitive to the depth of water. We have an amazing resource for a state that you don't think of as being very wet, quite honestly. We have amazing wetland resources. The playa lakes of western Kansas are just amazing. And if you ever look at the playa lakes region, goes clear down into Texas and even New Mexico, and this whole same topography goes up into Nebraska, where they call it the rainwater basin area, and then on up into the Dakotas, where we call it, what do we call it? The potholes. Very important ephemeral wetlands. They may only hold water once every 3, 5, 7 years. That can be very, very crucial. Past year or two, they had some good rains out in western Kansas. And this area that had been farmed for the past 5 years, or they attempted to farm it, all of a sudden was wet and it was just loaded with birds. Just loaded with birds. Absolutely amazing. Cheyenne Bottoms and Guevara National Wildlife Refuge, those big central marshes. If you have never been there, you need to go. They are amazing. They're amazing almost any time of the year unless they're frozen solid. But April and early May, make a trip. Take a day, drive out. Just truly, truly amazing. Playa Lakes region, the local marshes, Corps of Engineers lakes have done a lot. The rivers pre-Corps of Engineers, go back pre-1850, a lot of these rivers were meandering, big marshy areas. The rivers got channelized, we started farming, we started trying to control the river, which is an oxymoron, but we lost a lot of marshes. The Corps of Engineer lakes have done a good job of bringing back some of those wetlands. And they're becoming more and more crucial as we're starting to realize. Disturbed cropland, urban areas. Cropland is monoculture, plain and simple. Got a section of wheat. Whoopee. If you're a Dick Sissel, you may be happy. That's about it. So I mean, it limits things, but they still have a niche that are used. Towns are fascinating, especially in western Kansas. I have a friend, I maintain a website called ksbirds.org. And I've got a friend that is working up a information for me, if I can ever pry it out of his hands, it's been working on it for 5 years, of these sewage treatment ponds in small towns of western Kansas. How accessible they are and where they are. Ruth is sitting here looking at me going, why? You get out in western Kansas, about the only open water is going to be a sewage lagoon, either at a feedlot or in town. You don't want to know what they're eating sometimes, but the birds are there and they're feeding, usually on little insects, and it can just be teeming with life. You get out in some of those western Kansas counties, where's the only place you're going to find much of a stand of trees? At the cemetery. Always plant old trees. Do we have any dendrologists in here? Any tree people? Never mind. I was birding in eastern Dickinson County over Christmas, and I found this old cemetery with 6 huge Douglas fir in it. Douglas fir in Kansas, really? I was just like, wow. Gotta go back and measure. Okay. One of the, let's see, Kuchler's map of the potential vegetation of Kansas generalized. It's an amazing, it's a neat map. I love it. You've got these sandy areas down here, the Eccles Beds region down here along the Ark River. Just, they call it sand sage prairie. And look right here. That is in western Dickinson County, between Abilene and Solomon, right along I-70. Got a water guy over here that's understanding exactly where I'm going with it. That area is a fascinating little pocket of sand dunes that are stabilized. You see it once you get past the, I'll use this reference. Everybody knows where the turnoff is to the Russell Stover factory, right? Yeah, everybody knows that. From there to Solomon, right in through there, you just hit these rolling dunes. If they do farm it, half the time it's blowing sand if the wind comes up. Just this fascinating little that is generally felt to be part of the same geologic formation that created that. Just as I always noticed that for years until I finally saw this map, and it's like, well, there it is. So fascinating. Timber areas, you know, of course, the native grasslands. All the green is grasslands. We have amazing diversity in this state. We all too often take it for granted. These are blue grosbeaks. When I'm trying to help people understand birds, I like to use the college male analogy. Birds are a lot like college males. 90% of what they do comes down to 2 things: food and sex. That's the driving forces. Some people will contend it's more than just college age males. He is showing off. She is appearing interesting. And I will not show you the next picture to follow in this series. Okay, some basic keys to bird ID. I'm rambling. People, does anybody have, yeah, here we go. People pick up a field guide. This happens to be one of my 2 favorite field guides. And they're trying to figure out what they have. They start going through here and they're like, OMG. I don't have a clue which one of these it looks like. I didn't know there were so many little brown birds in the entire world. Use every resource available to you. Get a checklist and see what might be around your area. There's a lot of help out there. Learn to listen, 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 listen. How many of you can hear a song come on the radio and in about the first 3 or 4 notes it's like, that's the Electric Light Orchestra, it's, you just, bam, you know it because you've heard it so much. That's what a lot of the birders who some of us all know are like. They go out in any environment, and I was doing it this morning, I came walking up here, I heard cardinals, I heard house sparrows, I heard house finches, I heard crows. It was a short walk from where I parked up to here. 90% of what we're doing, 90% of what we're seeing, we're hearing. We call it bird watching, but half the stuff I won't even get an eye on. I simply know the songs. You play them over and over and over. Spend as much time watching and observing the bird as possible. Bird watchers, especially beginning bird watchers, have this bad habit. They look at the bird for 5 seconds and they start doing this. Or worse yet, nowadays it's like, you know, little brown bird, and they're telling me they've got a species in their backyard that's only known to occur in Japan and Korea. No. Spend as much time as you can watching the bird, watch everything about it. You're going to do a detailed description of that bird. Take notes. Not enough people do that anymore. I tell people, this has neither wings or legs. It's going nowhere. Watch the bird as long as it's there. Get as many cues from it as you can. Once it's gone, then you can pick this up. Then you can pick it up. We get in too big of a hurry, we want to have instant identification. Study the bird. Take birds you know, or think you know, and a notepad, and start writing down everything you can about it. What's the flash color of, or the intertail covert color of an American robin? Everybody thinks the robin is orange and black. The intertail coverts, the area also known as the vent area, has a flash of white. And just simple little things like that. Take the birds you know and identify them. Do you know how many people send me pictures of house sparrows? Want to know what they are? A couple a month. Saw this bird at my feeder and it's a female house sparrow. Get a bird. For everyone that thinks that sparrows are dull and boring, that is a LeConte sparrow. They come through very quietly in the spring and they're around for quite a while, the Tallgrass Prairie in the fall. It is probably one of my 3 favorite sparrows. It may be up in the top 1 or 2. So that buffy orange wash up there, you go out in a calm morning when the dew's so heavy you take 3 steps and you're soaked from the knees down. You get an area where there's grass, maybe a few sunflowers, or maybe some Illinois bundle flower, and you just pish a couple times. Bird watchers have a strange vocabulary. They do something called pishing. There's an H involved that's very important. P-I-S-H. And it's just you're making a little noise. Psh, 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 psh. Some birds will respond to it, others won't. We don't know why it works and why it doesn't. It does not work in Africa, I can tell you that. And these little guys will start jumping up. And if you just stand there quietly, they'll start working their way into you. I've had them kind of as close as 5 feet away from me. Just, they're beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Front of these books has amazing information, and most people never ever read it. And it becomes very critical because you need to have a roadmap. Whereas this one calls the topography of a bird. And different bird species have somewhat different terms. This happens to be a large sparrow, nesting species of the flamingo. Looks like a little quail head on that thing. Redtailed coverts, rump, wing bars, back. Sometimes we use colloquial terms. Sometimes we don't call it a rump. Sometimes we call it a butt. Especially if it's a Yellowrumped Warbler, we call them butterbutts. Which offended somebody one time. I couldn't believe that. Anyway, right there's a butterbutt. Yellowrumped Warbler, right there. Right yellow patch there. Hawks have slightly different words to detail some of these things. Attention to detail. Little bitty things that you just never think of. We tend to do sort of the holistic. Well, it's kind of a little brown bird. You need to have wing bars? I don't know. What color were the legs? I don't know. Do you have an eye ring around the eye? I don't know. Every little detail is a clue. Shape, location, habits. Certain birds are going to be certain. Now, they have wings. John Zimmerman, amazing man. I was talking with him one time, a group of us were talking to him, and they said, well, I saw this bird at such and such a location. I couldn't believe it. And he said, birds have wings, and they've been known to use them. So a bird can show up anywhere. But on a routine basis, there's certain places they're going to be. We don't talk. Oh, happy to use. There we go. Bill type and color, leg color, eye stripes, wing bars, color patterns. Some people get really hung up. Think about house finch and purple finch. Was it more of a purplish hue or more this pinkish rose hue? No, don't even go there. The processes that we use to make these books have gotten a lot better. And color rendition is a lot better than it used to be. But you can still get an odd printing, and the time of day, the kind of light. I got some photographers in the back of the room going, oh yeah. Time of day, kind of light, angle of the bird, they can all change that hue subtly. My wife was a florist for 25 years. She's an artist by nature, and she just has an amazing concept of color. The way she and I describe colors are not the same. Look at patterns, look at light and dark patterns. Use phrases kind of reddish or brownish, things like that. And help. But don't say, well, don't start trying to match colors, because it won't work. And especially if somebody sends you a picture from their phone, or they post it on Facebook. Facebook does some funny things to pictures, and some of those cameras have funny settings. This is an example. I could say I saw a yellow bird, little yellow bird with dark wings. Matches all three of those. Could also sort of match a goldfinch. In this case, we have a yellow warbler, we have a blue-winged warbler, we have a prothonotary warbler. All of them are little yellow birds with dark wings. And yet, once you get beyond that, there's a myriad of differences. A lot of differences there. Got some 2 strong white wing bars and black eye stripe. We've got these yellow stripes in the male yellow warbler. We've got this dark backup in here. And look at the form. I mean, it's aren't the best illustrations, but just the form of the bird is different. The shape of the beak is different. Simple, they're all little things. Shorebirds, attention to the beak is so critical. Most people view shorebirds and gulls and sparrows all in the same breath. It's like, yeah, somebody else identify those. So attention to details. And then say, ask yourself, what distinguishes this bird from a similar species? What characteristics does it have similar to others in its family? Bluebirds and robins are in the same family. They're all thrushes. And there are certain similarities between them. If a bluebird flies off of a power line as I'm going down the road at 70 miles an hour, and a house sparrow flies down off the power line, they fly very differently. They fly very differently. And somebody would probably say, well, why are you watching them and not the road? That's a good question. What habits does it have? Stop bird watching and start watching the bird. We sometimes go along going, okay, I got that one, click, next one, and we don't take the time to really, really study it. If you want to drive 2 people crazy, get one birder that loves to watch a bird and learn a lot about it, and have them go birding with somebody that's only out to get as many checks on their checklist as they can. They will be ready to kill each other by the end of the day. They both love birds, just in a different manner. A fellow from California that I've taken birding a couple of times while he's passing through. He came through last August, and he had a list of target species, and it was, the county fair was over, I had time. He wanted to see an immature Mississippi kite. He'd seen the mature Mississippi kite, he wanted to see the immature Mississippi kite. Because to him, seeing identifiable forms, adult versus a juvenile or immature, was as exciting as seeing a new species. Late August, it's fairly easy to find immature Mississippi kites. We got up in the area of Kansas known as South Park. That one was sitting in the tree. It was sitting there begging for food, and the adults were coming and feeding it. And it sat there. He sat there with his spotting scope and his notepad for 35 minutes, taking notes and watching that bird. I learned so much about the plumage of a juvenile Mississippi kite that day. Just a bunch. But that was his thing. He was watching the bird. Neither one is right or wrong. It's what you enjoy. If you really want to learn birds, stop bird watching and start watching birds. Form. All these things, just a laundry list of things you can think about. And the more you study the birds, the more you start to realize some of these differences. Form, silhouette, how does it fly? The woodpecker tends to go flat, 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 wide, flat, 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 wide. All woodpeckers do that same kind of flight. How does it walk? Pipits, little birds, most people think they're sparrows, walk. Very deliberately. A lot of sparrows don't walk. They hop. That's what we're on video.
Do the spotted sandpiper.
Spotted sandpipers are little teetery things. and they'll bomb. They'll land. It's really hilarious. We were bird watching in Panama. We were 2 weeks, oh, that was a beautiful January. 2 weeks in Panama, and we were about 30 miles from Colombia in a native village where we went to see the harpy eagle, the largest eagle in the world. Absolutely amazing. Saw all sorts of amazing birds up there. Last morning we were there, we were waiting for high tide so we could get the boat to go out. And the native women were doing some of their tribal dances that they would do. And one of them was a spotted sandpiper dance. Oh, it's just hilarious. It was wonderful. Okay. General impression of shape and size. A concept that came out of the Army of World War II, learning to identify different planes based on how they looked and how they flew. And we've taken that and moved it on into birds. Certain birds fly certain ways. Even different gulls have different ways of flying. A salmon's gull or a Bonaparte's gull flies very differently from a ring-billed gull or a herring gull. A lot of it has to do with structure and just size of the bird. So general impression of shape and size. There is a bird book that I actually don't care for that much. The Golden Guide, little paperback book. People still bring those things out. They're 50 years old. Species haven't been updated. But they've got these wonderful diagrams in it, showing different families in flight and perched. And it's just, you know, look, a gull, a kite, and a falcon all have long pointed wings. And I have turned gulls into kites and falcons. How do they sit upright? You know, vultures are just placid, you know. They're hunched over. Milford Nature Center has had about 3 vultures through their existence. They've all been named Lurch. How do they stand? Pigeons have tiny little heads. Tiny little heads. Does it fly with neck out or scrunched back? Egrets and cranes. Egrets pull their head back. Egrets and herons pull their head back when they fly. That is, you know, very distinctive look. Cranes have legs trailing and the neck is straight out. Easy to differentiate, even at 8,000 feet. Do the legs dangle? I remember seeing a Virginia rail fly up out of Cord Creek Oasis outside of Las Vegas, Nevada. And I just saw it flying, and what was so distinctive to me was that the legs were just like, well, you better get those legs stiffened up before you land, fella. Does the perch upright or hunkered over? How does it leave the perch when it flies? Now, shrikes are notorious for being very flat. People will call me and say, I think I've got just dozens of hummingbirds in my flowers. And I ask them, when they feed, are they flying very horizontal or are they flying somewhat upright? Oh, it's just very, very flat. They have sphinx moths. They fly like this. Hummingbirds fly upright like this. So just little things like that can tell you a lot about a bird. But the little birds drive me to drink. Oh. Anyone want to venture a guess on one of our sparrows? So I pose a question, then I have time for our drink.
American tree.
It's good. What was the one back there?
American tree sparrow.
American tree sparrow. And one of the things there, a lot of people will say, well, I think it kind of has a faint white eye ring. Well, that's because it's just so darn close on the shot. It's got a bicolored beak. The bottom beak is different color than the top beak. A field sparrow would have a pink beak. So just little things like that. One of the things that the people think I'm anti-photography, because I really get down on people because they're trying to use their camera to do their bird observation. And I say if you're doing that, you have gone back to the Audubon style of studying birds, which was shoot and identify later. Only here it's nocturnal. And to me, when you're just looking at pictures, because I get sent so many pictures, I start asking questions. How did it act? How did it behave? What did it, I don't know. I know people that go out without binoculars. If you really want to learn birds, get a pair of binoculars. But the digital photography has brought to us a capability that, and I'm a purist, I'm a traditionalist, I love silver. I love emulsion film. I did so much of it in high school and college. I still love it. But it has made it very economical and very easy to get truly phenomenal pictures in a lot of them. And if the picture is garbage, you hit delete. It's only electrons. So we are learning a lot more about birds, especially in some of the disgustingly tough stuff like gulls, because of the digital photography revolution. Just absolutely amazing. You can see, you can look at all these feathers and the fineness of them and how they lay. And there are web pages and listservs where people will talk about, well, the third retro sub was different than the fourth retro, and it's like just breaking it down by every single feather and aging them by how much growth there was in the feather compared to each other. It's just phenomenal. Okay, anyways. Practice. Never be not bird. Start with birds in your own yard. Spend time watching common species. I always said that. Keep a list. Keep a list. It's just fun. I didn't start keeping a list until I was probably 20 years old. And I'd be going back and asking my mom, hey, when I was 5 years old, there's that bird out on the clothesline that I identified. What the heck was that? I wish I would have kept a list of them. Yeah, I didn't. Bird feeders are a great way to bring birds into your yard. That's a whole other talk. Walk and listen to the bird songs. Just listen. I tell people, go out bird watching and hear a song you don't recognize and then find the bird. They go, well, I don't recognize any of them. I said, then it's an easy place to start. It's very, very easy. Start trying to match the songs and calls to a bird. Very, very handy. This is the one that, the uncommon presentation of the common species. I have a list of how many different species I have turned meadowlarks into. I turned meadowlarks into prairie falcons. In the shrub, it's sitting funny, and you get a glimpse of, oh, that looked like, and then you go back and there's a meadowlark. So, just be aware that you're going to get tripped up a few times, and that's okay. Resources. Jansen and Grass Guide to Kansas Birds. This is not all inclusive, but it's going to have 300 and some of the most common bird species in Kansas. Some good Bob Grist photographs, some good details of that bird, and then a listing of good places in Kansas to go bird watching. Ken Kaufman, Birds of North America. Ken Kaufman was born in Ohio, grew up in Wichita, dropped out of school at age 16, and started hitchhiking his way around the country bird watching. He wrote a book called, I forgot what the name of it was. Oh my God. Kingbird Highway. Great story. Great story. I'm about living off of dog food sometimes. Sibley Guide to Birds, National Geographic Field Guide to Birds. These two are probably my favorite. I like illustrations versus photographs. A photograph, even the best photographs, are a moment in time. Illustrations, the drawings that Sibley does, he lines up 200 American robins, and then he sketches what the average robin looks like. So I really like that one. That's why I like drawings over illustrations over photos. The Peterson Field Guide series, Roger Torrey Peterson revolutionized bird watching with his first field guide back in 1937 or 41 or something like that, probably 37. It's just, he changed things. All of a sudden it went from shoot the bird, identify it, to look at the bird and identify it, which was a drastic change. Birds of Kansas. This is not designed to be taken out into the field. It weighs 5.5 pounds. The time that it was published, it was the heaviest book the University Press of Kansas had ever published. I had the privilege of spending 4 years of my life helping with that book. It talks about the natural history of birds of Kansas. It is a resource. It is not a bird book. I don't like trying. I know people that are trying to identify birds and they don't own a bird book. And you start looking on the internet, you'll find a gazillion answers, and 2 of them are probably right. What a bird book does for you that the internet or even an app on our phones can't do is how fast can you look at 10 different species this way? You start flipping through this book, you can cover a lot of species in a hurry. And they're probably going to have similar species next to each other, and maps and everything else. That's why I encourage people to get this. This is what you get after you've got, 37 of these. But it's a good book to have. It's got some great photography in it. I actually did bring a box of them today. If anybody wants to buy one and see me afterwards, I can make a deal. But it's got a lot of good information in it. Audio references. Okay, how many have a smartphone? Yeah, probably 90% of the people here. There are about, and I've got a bunch of them listed in the chapter, the Ornithology chapter. All the major field guides now have an app. And the real advantage to them, let me get something that's a little bit more interesting to look at here. That's good, come on. Oh, what the heck? They all have range maps. And they have songs on them. So you can be listening to songs and saying, okay, did I just hear what I thought I heard? Okay, Mr. Bardell, that's enough. That's the beauty of having an app on your phone. They're going to run from $5 or sometimes free up to, I think the Sibley guide is $25 or $30, which is what Apple's on. So there's a lot of resources out there today. My wife and I will sit there and be going down the road and we'll, quiz each other on, especially on warblers we're going into. Stokeston has a good series of CDs available. Anybody still use CDs? I do. Peterson Field Guide to Bird Songs, the Sibley E-Guide, all the smartphone apps have calls on them. Makes it very easy. Another whole group, if you are into warblers, warblers are fascinating. Warblers are the focus of many bird watchers in the spring because so many of them are here for 10 days and gone. They're colorful, they have amazing songs, and it's my wife's favorite time of the year. When the warblers go through, I have to treat her for depression for about 10 days afterwards. But there's a book app totally, completely dedicated to warblers, and I was going to bring it, I forgot. So anyway, you can find it on Amazon.com. All reasonably priced, and these all have printed copy, except iBird, as well as an app for your phone. Some websites that are worth visiting. This one right here, long URL. I've got a whole series of backyard birding guides. Talks about bird feeding, more about field guides, problems of the bird feeder, landscaping for birds. It's just a series of I think there's 8 Acrobat PDFs there. Print them out, use them, read them, whatever. Sibley Guides I just love to go to this guide because it's always showing some new artwork. Birds.cornell.edu has a lot of information, has all the birds of North America on there, as well as their calls. So that's a good site. Optics, okay, real quick on binoculars. You don't have to have binoculars to go bird watching. There's people now that do what they call naked birding, and that does not refer to clothing at all. But eventually you're going to wish that you did. Eventually you're going to wish that you did. Many past bad experiences come from cheap binoculars. It's not the glass that's in them, the lenses. It's the frame. Cheap binoculars have cheap frames, they get knocked out of alignment. And then you try to look, you got 2 images, you got to close one eye, it's bad things like that. 7 to 10 power, 35 to 50 millimeter objective lens. Objective lens is the big end here. These are probably 10 by 42s or 8 by 42s. Doesn't say. But that and that refers to the size of the objective lens in millimeters. Avoid zoom binoculars. Sounds like a good idea. It's not. Avoid fixed focus binoculars. Again, sounds like a good idea. You're driving nuts. Common birdwatcher binoculars are 7 by 35, 8 by 42, 10 by 42, somewhere in that range. If you're seeing them at Walmart or anywhere, they're sealed in the stiff plastic, don't buy them. They're cheap. If they have a built-in digital camera, avoid them. Neither the camera or the binoculars are going to be worth a darn. Avoid compact binoculars. There are good ones out there, but you're going to spend a lot of money for them. Compact binoculars, basically anything with smaller than a 35 millimeter objective lens. 8 by 21, some 9 by 25. Less light gathering capability, much narrower field of view. It's hard enough sometimes finding that bird in the binoculars with a standard binocular, but you rule that down and you're looking all over the place trying to find the bird. Somewhere between 100 and 225 is going to be where you start getting into some, what I would consider okay binoculars. Nikon, Bushnell, Pentax, Swift, Vortex, all brands that will fall into that category. If you get something one of those and you're saying, wow, this is really kind of, and you find yourself doing more and more, take the next step. Look at a Vortex Diamondback, 250 to 300. Nikon Monarch. We have Monarch 3s, 5s, and 7s now. They're really nice. Bushnell Elite. Now we're getting up into some of the higher priced binoculars. Pentax, 650 to 700. Here we're up to the Cadillac. Swarovski 8 or 10 by 42, $2,350 to $2,500. I have a lot of friends that use it. If you are going to spend that much money on a pair of binoculars, you had better be bird watching every single day to justify it. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. A pair of binoculars I carry is a pair of Pentax. I've had them since, well, it'll be 15 years now. I have fallen on them, literally almost cracked a rib on them eyes. And they're still hanging there and working. When I replace them now would be about $450. So, Kentucky Warbler. Everything's in warblers and trees. About a third of our warblers nest on the ground, which is why cats are so devastating. These nest on the ground, they nest around here in the timber. That's who I am, that's where you can get a hold of me. Questions? Are you awake? Yes, sir.
The loons live in the north. What keeps them up there, or why don't they come down?
We have loons here every year. They don't nest here, but they migrate through. Loons need open water. They need large bodies of open waters. Because of the way they're made, it's like a big aircraft. They need a long runway to take off. Loons are designed for swimming first and flying second. Their legs are so far back of their body, they cannot walk on land. Some of the grebes are the same way. They kind of muddle around the best they can to get 3 feet from the water up to where their nest is. They need open water, and I've seen a lot of common loons in the Gulf of Mexico in the wintertime. They come through every year. There was one still, because Milford Lake was still open, there was one hanging around a couple days ago at Milford Lake. And sometimes I even hear them call here in Kansas, and that is cool. That is cool. You know, we get a lot of loons coming through here. They need open water, but they're very sensitive to hot weather in the summertime. So that's why they go so far back north to breed. But they are here. Yes?
Could you share with everyone a question I had for you answered by an email about the whooping cranes and the sandhill crane that were at Milford?
What about it?
Well, they were together and it seemed odd, and you gave me a really interesting answer.
And you expect me to remember that? That was 2 months ago.
Why were they there together?
They love company. Cranes through central Kansas. How long have we been back to this station? I should be, it's just a piece. I'll get that to Whooping cranes, less than 500 in the wild, probably about 350. All nest up in a place called Woods Buffalo. It's up in Canada, park up there. And they winter, most of them winter down at Aransas National Wildlife Refuge on the coast of Texas near Corpus Christi. There is an area through Kansas about this wide where over 75% of the whooping cranes will migrate every year. all of the whooping cranes in that flock. The majority of them are going to go right down through the middle of the state. They'll sometimes do some roosting up on the Platte River. They go to the big marshes in Barton and Stafford County, and they come on down here to Salt Plains National Wildlife Refuge and keep working their way on south. Every so often in the fall, in November when they're moving, we'll have these huge storms come through. Sometimes they're called inland hurricanes, but they usually bring us wind, some rain, sometimes a little bit of snow, but they'll bring blizzard-like conditions up to the north. When that happens, any of those species that are moving south will get diverted east. Back in the 90s, there was one of those. They had whooping cranes on the shore, Lake Michigan, downtown Chicago, and sandhill cranes. When that happens, when the storm clears and they start heading back, trying to get on track. They don't go straight west and then back south. They take an angle and come through there. When that happens, we will be in line to be getting whooping cranes and sandhill cranes coming through this part of the state. Last fall we had one of those events. Pushed a lot of stuff to the west, coming to the east. And they started winding their way back down here because they were heading for there. When I saw that storm come through, I told people, I said, be on the lookout. You're liable to see whooping cranes and sandhill cranes where you don't normally see them. Whooping cranes tend to migrate by themselves. Sandhill cranes tend to migrate in large flocks. Whooping cranes in 1 or 2 family groups at a time. You'll see 3 to 6 to 8. Be a big flock. And what happened, we wound up right up in here, the wetlands up above Milford Lake, with 3 whooping cranes and 1 sandhill crane together. They will spend a lot of time on the Platte River together. They nest in all the same areas, so they were migrating at the same time. They got displaced, and they were there for quite a while because once they got down here, they got about that far, and then the weather patterns changed, and there was a south wind for days. Those whooping cranes stayed there from before Thanksgiving until when was it, about the 10th or 12th the 12th, Sunday the 12th of December. Folks were there watching them. They took off, they spiraled up, and they headed that direction. So they were here because they could be. I had, on Monday this week, I got to work. There was a message on our answering machine at work. Somebody said, I sent you a friend request. Would you please accept it and look at this picture that I took? I think we had whooping crane, sandhill cranes fly over our farm in extreme northwest Potawatomi County over the weekend. Popped it open, there was a picture of 7 sandhill cranes. That probably got displaced by the same storm, and because the winter has been so mild, they haven't seen any need to go any further south. Now, if we were to have 2 weeks of sub-freezing temperatures and all those marshes up on the Blue and the Vermilion River iced up, they'd probably be gone and head further south. We have sandhill cranes that spend every winter in Kansas, down in the Red Hills. So some species are hardwired to go clear to Mexico, Central America, South America to winter. Others are going to go no further south than they have to survive. Okay, break.
All right, let's take a break. Thank you so much.